Have you ever seen this before? Some of you probably have, and many of you probably haven't. But this tiny packet holds the key to one of the greatest mysteries surrounding Bhagavan Jagannath. To understand what this is, we have to first understand the extraordinary story of Jagannath himself. Unlike almost every major temple in India where the divine is worshipped in marble, granite, or metal, the supreme deity of Purushottama Kshetra chose to manifest in wood, not polished, not adorned with jewels, but in the living form of the sacred meal. Bhagavan Jagannath, Balabhadra, Mata Subhadra, and Sudarshana Chakra all are carved from wood, and it's a tradition unlike any other in the Hindu world. But why? Why would Jagannath, the Lord of the universe, choose a body that grows old and must eventually be replaced? In order to answer that question, we must journey through the pages of Skanda Purana, the Brahma Purana, and also the ancient regional palm leaf chronicles and the folklore that preserve the early traditions of Jagannath. Watch this video till the end because we'll be uncovering one of the most extraordinary mysteries preserved in the Jagannath tradition. Namaste and welcome to Chaturya. I'm K. Kumar, screenwriter, filmmaker, and author of books like Deva, Naga, Dakini, and Rakshasa. In today's episode, we'll uncover the remarkable story of a king searching for a god, a young priest following an impossible trail, and a humble forest tribe whose devotion transformed the spiritual history of India. If you enjoy exploring India's Puranas, folklore, and forgotten traditions, then I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. And if you enjoyed this video, do check out my other videos, including the Naga series inspired by my best-selling book of the same name published by HarperCollins. Long, long ago, there lived a king called Indradyumna in the kingdom of Malwa. He ruled from his grand capital at Avanti. He was a king of unblemished virtue, deeply versed in the sacred scriptures and exceptionally devoted to Bhagavan Vishnu. Yet, a persistent restlessness consumed his spirit. He looked upon his massive stone palaces, his overflowing treasuries, and his grand-standing armies and found them hollow. His soul yearned for a singular monumental purpose, to gaze upon the ultimate, unvarnished, manifest form of the divine on earth. A form capable of granting immediate unconditional liberation to any human being who looked upon it. The king called together a grand assembly of court scholars and sages, asking if anyone knew where Bhagavan resided in his most compassionate earthly manifestation. Silence hung over the court until an old wandering ascetic with dust-covered matted hair stepped forward. The ascetic spoke of a well-guarded secret. Far toward the eastern sea, hidden within the dense wilderness of Utkala, that is, in modern-day Odisha, near a blue hill named Nilagiri, the divine was worshipped in utter secrecy under the name Nilamadhava. The word Nila can mean a sapphire, the color blue, or it may also be used for the dark color of the night sky. The ascetic warned that the location was intensely guarded by nature and by an ancient community of forest dwellers, hunters called Shavaras. Its pathways were completely hidden from the eyes of the outer kingdoms. Determined to trace this divine account, King Indradyumna turned to his most reliable, pure-hearted emissary, Vidyapati, the younger brother of the royal family priest. The king charged the young Brahmin with a sacred duty to venture into the unknown eastern wild lands, navigate the hidden geography of Utkala, and locate Nilamadhava, and bring back word so that the empire could unite in Bhagavan's seva. Vidyapati traveled for months through unfamiliar terrains, over rushing rivers, and into forests so dense that the canopy entirely blocked the sun. Eventually, he crossed into the territory of the Shavaras, an ancient tribe whose lineage was deeply woven into the oldest historical strata of the land. The chief of these forest dwellers was a devout elder named Vishwavasu. In some regional versions, he may be also known as Shatrushala. Now Vidyapati quickly realized that to forcefully demand the location of the deity, called Nilamadhava, would violate the laws of hospitality and invite disaster. So instead, he chose to live among the Shavaras, adopting their minimalist lifestyle and studying their deep understanding of the natural world. Over time, Vidyapati won the absolute trust of the clan. He fell deeply in love with Vishwavasu's daughter, the beautiful Lalita. With the joyful blessings of the chief and the entire community, the young Brahmin and the tribal maiden married each other. But Vidyapati was there on a royal mission, and he hadn't forgotten it. The king wanted him to locate Nilamadhava. Every evening he saw his father-in-law returning from the high ridges of the Nilagiri hill, smelling of wild sandalwood, forest musk, and fresh river orchids. Vidyapati was sure that his father-in-law was going to see Nilamadhava. So he begged his wife Lalita to intercede on his behalf. He explained the spiritual desperation of King Indradyumna, who had sent him here. And moved by her husband's earnest devotion, Lalita pleaded with her father. Vishwavasu initially refused. He said he will not take him to Nilamadhava. But looking into the pure eyes of his daughter and son-in-law, the chief relented under one non-negotiable condition. Vidyapati must be blindfolded throughout the entire journey to the sanctuary, ensuring his eyes could never trace a jungle trail for any outsider. Before sunrise, Vishwavasu fastened a thick cloth over Vidyapati's eyes. But Lalita, wanting to help her husband fulfill his vow to the king without breaking her father's law, had quietly slipped a small pouch of wild mustards into his waistband. And as the elder led his blindfolded son-in-law through the razor-sharp brambles, across a deep stone chasm, and up the slippery moss-covered paths of the Nilagiri hill, Vidyapati silently dropped the tiny seeds one by one onto the fertile earth. He knew that when the approaching seasonal monsoons arrived, the seeds would sprout into a vibrant line of bright yellow flowers, visibly carving a pathway through the thick wilderness, which will help him to identify the location of Nilamadhava. And when they arrived at the hidden cave overhung with wild jasmine, Vishwavasu removed the blindfold from Vidyapati's eyes. Vidyapati gasped and fell to his knees. Standing before him was Sakshat Nilamadhava, a form of such profound, effulgent beauty that it seemed to absorb all the light in the universe into itself. While the young priest sat in deep meditation, Vishwavasu went out into the surrounding bush to gather the daily forest offerings. As the chief stepped away, a momentous event occurred. A wild crow perched on a branch above the sacred forest pool, a pond, fell into its water. And the moment its body touched the pool, it was instantly liberated from the cycle of rebirth, transforming into a radiant, celestial being that ascended to the heavens. Vidyapati watched this in wonderment, realizing that the hidden spot, this place, was a crucible of ultimate salvation or moksha. But a moment of twist was about to happen. When Vishwavasu returned to the cave with his arms full of forest offerings, a sudden heavy chill filled the air. The vibrant sapphire radiance of Nilamadhava began to fade, turning pale and translucent. And suddenly a voice like the rustling of 1,000 autumn leaves echoed from the stone walls. It was the voice of Nilamadhava. "O Vishwavasu, for generations I have rested in your arms. I have relished simple wild fruits and unpretentious devotion of the Shavara clan. But the world outside is weeping in spiritual darkness, and I must step forth to heal it. I shall leave this form, but fear not, I shall return." With a soft flash of indigo light, the image vanished entirely, leaving only empty grey stone. Vishwavasu dropped his leaves and collapsed to the floor of the cave. He started weeping bitterly. Vidyapati knelt beside his father-in-law, embracing and sharing his grief. He comforted the elder, explaining that this was not a punishment, but a grand cosmic expansion. Bhagavan was preparing a way to belong to the forest and the palace simultaneously. Vidyapati immediately set out for Avanti to inform King Indradyumna that the location of the sanctuary had been found. And when the king heard about the presence of Bhagavan in Nilagiri, he marched toward Utkala with a massive entourage. But what awaited him at that cave was a big shock, a big disappointment. When King Indradyumna arrived at the Nilagiri hill, he found the yellow trail of sprouted mustard flowers leading to a cave, but the cave was empty. Despair gripped his heart. He lay down on the golden sands of the seashore at Purushottama Kshetra. He undertook a sacred fast as a matter of absolute scriptural discipline, vowing never to rise until Bhagavan showed him a sign. It was his desire to see Bhagavan in the truest and most powerful form on earth that after 3 days of fasting, on the third night, the ocean began to roar with unusual intensity. The divine appeared to the king in a vivid dream, speaking words of immense comfort. Bhagavan said, "Do not despair, O king. I will not return in a human form or a precious stone. I am manifesting as Darubrahma, the divine log of wood. Go down to the seashore at dawn. You will find a colossal piece of timber floating in the surf, marked with my holy symbols." At sunrise, the king alongside Vidyapati and the tribal chief Vishwavasu rushed to the water's edge. Bobbing gently on the crashing waves was a massive tree trunk, glowing with an internal, otherworldly light and emitting a fragrance of wild sandalwood and forest musk, just like Nilamadhava. The king ordered his strongest royal wrestlers and heavy war elephants to haul the timber and pull it onto the beach. Heavy iron chains and thick hemp ropes were tied around the bark. The elephants strained and the soldiers shouted, but the log remained completely stationary. It was anchored on the surf as if rooted to the center of the earth. It didn't even move. The might of an entire empire was useless, completely useless, against this log of wood. Seeing the king's failure, Vidyapati stepped forward. He said, "O king, you cannot bring Bhagavan into the sanctuary through royal decree or physical conquest. He is a master of the wilderness. He will only move if his original keeper invites him." So King Indradyumna humbled himself and requested Vishwavasu to step forward. The Shabara chief walked into the crashing waves into the water, dressed in his simple attire. He did not use ropes or iron tools. He simply placed his calloused hands upon the rough bark of the floating wood, while Vidyapati placed his hands side by side with the chief's. With a gentle pull, born of pure familial affection, the colossal log instantly became weightless. If you have stayed with me until this point, please consider liking the video and subscribing to this channel. It really helps me continue creating well-researched content on Indian Puranas, folklore and forgotten traditions. And if you'd like to explore the fascinating deities and spirit traditions of southern India in greater depth, do check out my book Daiva. You'll find the link on your screen now or also in the description below. The divine log of wood was found. It was brought to the high altar known as Mahavedi, but a new crisis arose. The finest sculptors of the region were summoned to shape the wood. But the moment their steel chisels touched the surface, the metal shattered into pieces, leaving the bark completely unmarked. As anxiety enveloped the court, a master craftsman named Ananta Maharana arrived at the palace. He offered to carve the images on one strict condition. He must be locked inside the sanctuary with the sacred log for exactly 21 days, and absolutely no one must open the doors or disturb his silence. If the doors were unsealed even a momentarily, he would vanish instantly. The heavy wooden doors were locked and sealed with the royal signet. For days, the rhythmic sound of a chisel echoing from within comforted the king and his court. However, as the weeks progressed, the sounds from the sanctuary completely stopped. A deep, heavy silence enveloped the temple. The queen, driven by deep compassion, grew terrified that the elderly artisan had perished or died from lack of sustenance. She begged the king to intervene. Caught between his royal vow to the artisan and his human empathy, King Indradyumna finally yielded and ordered the heavy doors to be unlocked on the 17th day. And when they stepped into the dim light of the sanctuary, the old man was nowhere to be found. He had vanished into thin air. It is believed that the craftsman was none other than Vishwakarma himself, the divine architect of the Devas. But because the king broke his promise and opened his door, he disappeared. And on the stone floor sat three half-finished, beautifully abstract wooden forms with large, round, all-seeing eyes and short, outstretched arms. Mahaprabhu Jagannath, his elder brother Balabhadra, and their sister Subhadra. King Indradyumna fell to the floor in immense grief, believing his impatience had ruined the divine icons. But as he wept, a thunderous voice echoed from the heavens, revealing the sacred truth of the chosen forms. The voice said, "Thinking it is a wooden image, let there not be the idea in you that this is a mere image. This is verily the form of Supreme Brahman." This scriptural revelation from the Skanda Purana perfectly mirrors the timeless declaration of the Upanishads. The Supreme Being, the Parabrahman, is without hands or feet, yet moves and grasps. He sees without eyes, he hears without ears. He knows whatever is to be known, and of him there is no knower. Vishwavasu looked upon the white faces and smiled through his tears. Recognizing the familiar, protective forms of the ancient wooden pillars his people had cherished since the beginning of memory to ward off adversity. Vidyapati bowed in deep contemplation, recognizing the high scriptural truth that the absolute reality is ultimately beyond conventional human features. And finally, the deities were installed in the temple by Brahma himself with divine rituals. To ensure that this divine lesson of coexistence was permanently etched into history, the temple established a unique system of service that balanced both lineages with absolute respect. The standard Brahmin priests were entrusted with a formal scriptural liturgy, while the direct descendants of the Shavara tribe, formed the sacred order of the Daitapatis. Because the forest clan were the original keepers of Bhagavan, the Daitapatis retained exclusive rights over the physical bodies of the deities during the grand summer festivals. But how did a cosmic deity end up as a piece of wood in a tribal forest in the first place? And that's a twist you won't find in older Puranas, but in regional lore. Before the end of the Dwapara Yuga, at the place called Prabhasa Kshetra, a hunter named Jara Shavara, believed to be the primordial ancestor of the tribe, spotted what he assumed was the eye of a deer glinting behind a distant bush. He released a swift arrow, but then he discovers with absolute horror that his arrow had pierced the foot of Bhagavan Krishna. Stricken with agonizing grief, Jara collapsed at the feet of the dying avatar of Bhagavan. But Krishna looked upon the hunter with boundless grace, revealing that this moment was entirely orchestrated by divine destiny to transition the eras. When the mortal remains of Krishna were placed upon the funeral pyre, the fire consumed the elements of the body but refused to touch one unperishable core, his divine heart. It transformed into a dense, radiant indigo relic. Jara lovingly recovered the sacred, pulsing legacy from the ashes and carried it deep into the safe sanctuary of the eastern mountains. Protected by the tribal lineage, this very relic is believed to have manifested in the sapphire image of Nilamadhava, which later became the wooden core of Jagannath. One traditional belief from the region identifies the Brahma Padartha as the imperishable heart of Bhagavan Krishna. And even to this date, a mysterious ritual exists where the Daitapati priest, who descended from the ancient Shavara tribe, is chosen for a sacred responsibility during the Nabakalebara ritual. Late at night, according to long-standing temple tradition, the ritual is performed in complete darkness. The Daitapati priest is blindfolded. His hands are wrapped in layers of cloth and enters the sanctum alone. His mission is to remove the mysterious Brahma Padartha from the old deity and place it inside the new one. And the priests who have participated in this rare ritual have described the object as feeling alive, almost as though it has a heartbeat. This is the ultimate realization of Darubrahma. Every year when Mahaprabhu Jagannath leaves his sanctum during the Rath Yatra, and every time he receives a new body during Nabakalebara, this timeless truth comes alive. The divine chose not to dwell in flawless stones with precious gems, but in living wood. A body that ages, a body that changes, a body that reminds us that while forms are temporary, the divine is eternal. By preserving the shared legacy of the royal priest Vidyapati and the tribal chief Vishwavasu, the Jagannath tradition teaches us that the divine cannot be claimed by any one kingdom, caste or community. He belongs to everyone. He is Mahaprabhu Jagannath, the ruler of the universe. At the beginning of the video, I showed you this. Now you know why it is so sacred. This is Jagannath Ji's Nirmalya, the dried Mahaprasad of Mahaprabhu. According to the Skanda Purana, Vishwavasu and his family lived on Bhagavan Nilamadhava's Nirmalya. The text tells us that it freed them from disease and old age and ultimately led them towards liberation. Perhaps that is why even today, millions of devotees preserve it in their homes and receive it with such deep reverence. But the story of Jagannath is far greater than a temple. It is the story of a king who searched for God, a priest who discovered that devotion is greater than scholarship, and a forest tribe whose faith became part of one of Hinduism's greatest living traditions. And that is why Mahaprabhu Jagannath continues to draw millions of devotees from every corner of the world. Not because he belongs to one place, but because he belongs to everyone. Now you have to tell me in the comments which part of this story touched you the most. And if you enjoyed this episode, please hype it and share it with your friends and family. It really helps the channel reach more people who love India's Puranas and folklore. So until next time, I'm K. Harikumar and you're watching Chaturya. May Mahaprabhu be with you.